car lay overturned deep inside the forest. Nearby, a bear wearing a suit moved around as if dealing with the aftermath. Some time later, the man who had been inside the vehicle woke up in an unfamiliar room. His head throbbed as he tried to piece together what had happened. Slowly, memories returned. He recalled driving through the forest when an animal suddenly leapt onto the road. At that moment, he remembered shouting the name Chica. Chica had been sitting in the passenger seat. As the memory settled, a pig walked into the room. It stood upright like a human and spoke in clear human language. The pig greeted him politely and asked whether he had slept well. Without hesitation, the man asked about his daughter, Chica. The pig explained that the man and his daughter had been in an accident on a forest road the previous day. Fortunately, a villager had found them and brought them here for treatment. The pig said the man had suffered a serious blow to the head, while Chica had only minor injuries. Relieved to hear his daughter was safe, the man asked to see her immediately. The pig agreed and mentioned that breakfast was ready and Chica was already waiting. As they walked toward the main hall, the man noticed numerous images of animals lining the walls. From the interior, he assumed this place was some kind of large estate. Judging by its design, the building felt extremely old. Seeing the animal imagery everywhere, he wondered if the residents had questionable taste. After a moment, he asked the pig why it was wearing a pig costume. He questioned whether this was a themed hotel. The pig chuckled lightly and said it was an amusing idea. They soon reached the main hall and the pig opened the door. Inside, many animals were seated like humans. The sight left the man confused, as he assumed they were all people in animal costumes. Suddenly, a young girl ran toward him, calling him daddy. Overjoyed, he embraced her and asked if she was okay. She said that since he hadn't woken up, she spent time playing with the animals. The animals quietly observed the reunion. A goat guessed the man's age, while a sheep commented on his healthy appearance. A cat remarked that he looked slim and smelled of cigarettes. A dog noted that stamina was what mattered most. Meanwhile, a cow wondered whether he would be entertaining enough. The man didn't hear any of this. After confirming Chica was unharmed, he thanked everyone for saving them. Suddenly, a boar grabbed him from behind. The deer seated at the head, named Huenza, told the boar not to frighten their guests. He invited them to sit and enjoy the meal. Without hesitation, the man and his daughter began eating as if they hadn't eaten in days. The animals watched with satisfaction, pleased by their healthy condition. Once they finished, the man asked for directions to the nearest hospital to have his daughter checked again. The atmosphere instantly turned tense. Startled, the man wondered if he had said something wrong. The deer calmly said his concern was admirable, but since they were already here, they should spend some time touring the place. Though hesitant, the man agreed when his daughter said she wanted to stay and play. The pig became their guide. As they walked, the man grew uneasy and asked whether they could call a taxi. The pig replied that there was no phone service here. Shocked that such a place lacked modern connectivity, the man still went along since his daughter seemed happy. Eventually, they entered a room that left them frozen in place. Inside were humans kept in cages like animals. The pig began feeding them the way farmers feed livestock. When water was released, the humans fought each other desperately to drink. The pig explained that the farm raised around 100 humans, sorted by age and gender. This particular shed was the lowest rank. Earlier, Chica had called the pig cute. Now, the pig looked at the caged humans and commented that they looked cute as well. He explained that he liked this shed most because the humans here couldn't speak. The man, horrified, asked whether this was some kind of joke. The pig didn't answer directly. Instead, he told the man not to be afraid, since he would live in a better shed. Checking his notes, the pig explained that a full examination had been conducted when they arrived. Despite the man's drinking habits, a short detox would fix that. That meant he would become high-quality, juicy meat. The man recoiled, accusing the pig of treating him like livestock. The pig smiled calmly and said everyone reacted that way at first. The pig explained that humans were raised on carefully prepared, nutritious feed under strict quality control to ensure a stable supply. Their purpose was to produce safe, high-quality, flavorful meat. In the next moment, the pig shoved both the father and daughter into a cage, telling them they would stay there for several weeks. Only then did the man fully understand that everything he had seen was real. The animals were intelligent and self-aware like humans. They kept people in cages as if they were products. He realized their accident had never been an accident at all. They had been brought here deliberately. The young girl cried and apologized to her father, saying it was her fault for wanting to play longer, which trapped them there. Hearing this, the man forced a smile and told Chica that none of it was her fault. Elsewhere, the pig appeared behind a deer examining a firearm. The deer's name was Ernest, and the pig reported that everything had gone exactly as planned. Ernest stood up, handed weapons to the gathered animals, and declared that the hunt had begun. At the same time, the man was running through the forest with his daughter, desperately trying to escape the village. While fleeing, he suddenly noticed a human who could speak. Approaching him, the man saw a collar around the human's neck. Instantly, the collared man began behaving like a dog and lunged at him. A dog appeared holding a gun. This human had been trained as a pet. The dog fired at the man but accidentally killed his own human. It did not matter, as he still had 3 more on a leash. The man ran deeper into the forest, but after a short distance, he triggered a trap that injured his leg. Ignoring the pain, he told his daughter to keep running. Soon after, a boar arrived, examining the empty trap and failing to detect the man's scent. The man hid behind a tree, barely breathing. As he hoped not to be discovered, the boar suddenly appeared behind him, grabbed his neck and prepared to kill him until a gunshot rang out. Ernest had intervened. Seeing Ernest, the boar immediately apologized, claiming it was only play. Ernest pressed the gun to the boar's head and scolded him for behaving like an animal. He demanded to know who allowed him to torment humans and eat them alive, calling such behavior cruel. The boar, named Hoensa, stood trembling as Ernest reminded him that life must be respected. Ernest warned that treating humans as trash meant abandoning their own dignity. After scolding him, Ernest approached the man and apologized. Believing Ernest was different, the man begged him to save his daughter. Ernest calmly assured him there was nothing to fear. At that moment, a bear arrived carrying Chica, unconscious. The man froze in terror, unable to speak. Soon after, food preparation began. Meat sizzled, dishes were arranged, and animals gathered in the main hall. Ernest's earlier words became clear. The man's life would not be wasted. He would become part of them. The first dish presented was a human head surrounded by meat and fruit. The animals began eating without hesitation. During the meal, the pig informed Ernest that 3 more humans had arrived. Ernest smiled and told him to welcome them warmly. Outside, a badger and a lynx pushed a carriage. The badger said working outdoors felt wonderful, and the lynx agreed it was better than cleaning human sheds. When the carriage grew heavier, the lynx noticed the badger, Doug, had wandered off to play with flowers. The lynx, Nero, called him back, but Doug said they should enjoy rare outdoor work. Reluctantly, they continued. Inside the carriage, frightened humans huddled together. Doug spoke proudly about human hunting as a noble tradition and a sport for the elite. He called it his dream job. Suddenly, Nero noticed a human trying to break the lock and rushed over. The woman begged for help, but Doug arrived and struck her with a stick, forcing her back. At that moment, Doug saw smoke rising from the village. A signal. He opened the cages and released the humans. They were set free only to be hunted. Soon, each human was captured by a different animal and killed in brutal, horrifying ways. After every human was killed, Doug and Nero handled the bodies. When they were done, the two headed to a bar where human heads were mounted along the walls as decorations. Inside, many kinds of animals sat around, drinking and laughing the same way humans once did. A short while later, Doug and Nero's food arrived. It was a human leg sautéed perfectly. Doug ate with great enthusiasm, but Nero seemed distracted. For some reason, lately, eating human flesh felt wrong to him. Doug noticed Nero barely touching his food and asked if something was bothering him. With no other option, Nero forced himself to eat even though he disliked it. After a few bites, Nero rushed to the restroom and vomited everything. On their way home, Doug chatted casually, saying Nero was lucky because the next day, children from District 6 would arrive for a tour, and Nero would be responsible for guiding them. The following day, many young animals stood in front of a cell, staring at the humans inside. Just as humans visit farms to watch animals in cages, these animals enjoyed watching humans trapped the same way. The children shouted, asking the humans to look at them, but the humans huddled in a corner, refusing to respond. At that moment, Ernest approached and told the children that if they stayed quiet, the humans would eventually look at them. The children followed his advice, and slowly the humans raised their heads. Soon after, Nero arrived, as he was in charge of the tour. Nero guided the children through several cages. After walking for a while, he showed them a cage meant for extremely overweight humans. Inside, the humans ate anything they could find, snakes, insects, or whatever else was available just to survive. Watching Nero handle the tour, Ernest praised him, saying he was good at his job. Nero looked at Ernest and realized he was far more approachable than expected for a village leader. He understood why everyone respected him so much. As Nero studied Ernest, he felt like he had seen him before. Suddenly, Ernest announced that the tour would end there. He then suggested finishing by butchering one of the humans as a demonstration for the children. Nero was stunned and said they could not do that without permission from higher authorities. Ernest calmly replied that there was no problem since he himself granted that permission. Ernest selected one human and bound him tightly to a table. He examined the man and praised his youth and healthy appearance, calling him an excellent specimen. The man screamed that he did not want to die, crying out for his mother, but no one came to help. The children watched closely, delighted by the man's screams. Seeing their excitement, Ernest smiled and praised their diligence. He told them that sincerity was the most important thing in everything they did, or else it would be disrespectful to life. Ernest explained that meat was not merely flesh. Every day, someone held a knife and faced morality directly. That was what it truly meant to eat life, to eat humans. A young goat asked if it was really acceptable to eat humans. Ernest smiled and told them to remember respect and gratitude. To be eaten and enjoyed was the greatest happiness a human could have. The children became even happier, believing humans were most fulfilled when consumed. Ernest raised his knife and slowly began butchering the man. As Nero watched, a memory surfaced. He recalled the words, "Your life will not be wasted." He remembered Chica's father being hunted, and the moment a bear carried Chica's unconscious body. Nero collapsed as the truth returned. He remembered that he had once been human. He was Chica's father. Overcome by shock, Nero lunged forward, but a small bear suddenly stepped in front of him and asked if he wanted some meat. Nero froze. The bear said Ernest had prepared fresh meat for them. Soon after, the children thanked Nero for the tour and left. Ernest also thanked him, saying they would call on him again if needed. Elsewhere, Doug was at home, about to eat, when someone knocked on the door. It was Nero. Before Doug could speak, Nero grabbed him and asked if he remembered ever being human. Later, Nero told Doug everything, how he was once human and became an animal after being eaten. He knew Doug would not believe him. As expected, Doug laughed, praising Nero's imagination. When Nero insisted it was true and begged him to believe, Doug turned serious and said humans were nothing but meat. Doug claimed animals were children of God and could never have been human. Believing Nero was simply exhausted, he told him to rest and eat some meat. But in the very next moment, Nero vanished from the house. He wandered outside alone, lost in thoughts about who he truly was. He questioned why he was the only one who could remember the past. His thoughts drifted to Chica, wondering where she was now and if she had ended up like him. As he walked, doubt crept in, making him question whether he had ever truly been human. He struggled to understand how a human could end up inside an animal's body. Confusion overwhelmed him as he questioned what he was supposed to do next. After walking for a while, he suddenly saw a donkey indulging himself with a human woman. Without hesitation, Nero turned and ran, only to stumble upon a raccoon grilling a human body. The sight made him retch as he fled, vomiting repeatedly. Soon after, he saw a dog casually walking down the road with her pet human beside her. Unable to endure it anymore, Nero collapsed and began to cry, whispering that he wanted to see Chica. Lying on the ground, he wondered whether Chica was somewhere out there trapped inside an animal like him, or if she had already died. Questions flooded his mind, especially why he alone retained his human memories. He questioned where this place truly was and why animals behaved this way. What was his purpose here? Slowly, memories of his time with Chica resurfaced. He remembered her crying after seeing a weak butterfly caught in a spider's web. At the time, her father explained that it was simply how nature worked and there was nothing they could do. Chica then asked if she would also be eaten someday because she was weak. Her father reassured her, promising that if anyone tried to hurt her, he would protect her. Eventually, Nero returned to the road. As he walked, he encountered the same donkey he had seen earlier with the human girl. The donkey noticed him and asked if he wanted to join in. Nero said nothing and stared at him coldly. Taking that as agreement, the donkey led him inside. The girl lay motionless on the table, not reacting even when the donkey pressed a burning cigarette against her skin. Seeing his pet unresponsive, the donkey began beating her, complaining about how much money he had spent and how she was already useless. Watching this, Nero realized these beings were neither animals nor humans, and he counted himself among them. After finishing his abuse, the donkey told Nero to come back another time since his pet was no longer working properly. Nero replied with only 2 words, thanking him. The donkey was stunned and asked what he had done to deserve gratitude. Nero answered that he had finally understood why he was alive. Immediately after, he lunged forward and sank his teeth into the donkey's neck. Using all his strength, he tore flesh from him and ripped apart his face. As he did so, Nero believed he had been reborn for a single purpose: to erase every last one of these creatures. The next day, an animal named Gran knocked repeatedly on a door but received no response. Doug happened to pass by and asked Gran what was wrong. Gran replied that no matter how much he knocked, no one answered, even though the occupant had promised to go fishing with him. Doug assumed the person inside had likely died from drinking too much. With nothing else to do, Gran left. Inside the house, Nero was shown finishing his meal. What he had eaten was not a human, but the donkey he killed the previous night. Days later, many animals gathered in a hall due to a series of deaths within the village. They noticed that all the victims belonged to the privileged class. At first, they suspected the working class but dismissed the idea, believing animals would never kill one another. They then suspected human livestock, possibly pets or servants. Still, many refused to believe it, convinced humans were too weak to hunt animals. As the discussion continued, Ernest entered the room. Without speaking, he approached a piece of skin taken from a dead boar and began crying, calling out Hoence's name. After grieving, Ernest delivered a speech that stirred everyone present. A bear was the first to leave the hall. While others proclaimed themselves chosen beings or children of God, the bear understood they were ultimately just beasts. As he walked outside, Ernest watched him silently through a window. Suddenly, the bear caught the scent of blood coming from an abandoned building. His mouth watered as he thought it was finally his turn. He approached eagerly, not caring whether the killer was animal or human, craving only excitement. As soon as he entered, Nero dropped from the roof and drove a knife into the bear's nose. The bear retaliated, but Nero escaped quickly. A rope suddenly tightened around the bear's neck as Nero pulled from the other end, choking him. Using his sharp claws, the bear sliced through the rope and broke free. When the bear lunged at Nero, he slashed with his knife and severed one of its hands. Still, the bear did not stop and struck back with the other. Before long, its body was covered in deep wounds, yet it refused to retreat. In that moment, the bear seemed to understand something. It sensed that Nero was not just prey, but a wildcat, an instinctive killer born with overwhelming agility. More than bloodlust, the bear felt a fierce thirst for revenge radiating from Nero. With that resolve, Nero tore the bear apart, reducing it to countless pieces, while silently asking Chica to wait just a little longer. By morning, animals discovered the bear's remains scattered everywhere. Ernest severed the bear's head and removed its brain. One animal asked why Ernest always collected the brains. Another replied that he displayed them in his private estate so he would never forget his fallen comrades. Because of this, all the animals respected Ernest. After removing the brain, Ernest watched the bear being buried and muttered, "Let's go home, ugly. Back to our warm, welcoming home." Inside the house, Ernest sat before his collection of preserved brains. He remembered how he and the bear had grown up together, knowing each other since the village was first founded. Back then, they were reckless and young, constantly getting into fights. In the end, Ernest revealed that the bear alone knew the truth of what they really were and why they had been born. At that moment, a pig's head rolled into the room. Nero stepped inside and told Ernest that he was the last one left from that dinner table. Pointing a gun at Ernest's head, Nero said he would die as mercilessly as he had killed Nero and his daughter. He pulled the trigger and shot Ernest dead. Afterward, Nero prepared to take his own life, when Ernest suddenly walked into the room. Nero froze in shock, convinced he had just killed him. Before Nero could speak, Ernest explained that the body was only a doll he had created, a soulless lump of flesh. He called it a failed experiment and said biological research was merely one of his hobbies. His curiosity, he claimed, had no limits. Ernest praised Nero for regaining his memories and said it was remarkable that both his mind and body were completely stable. He admitted there had been a few sacrifices, but said they no longer mattered. As Nero charged toward him in rage, Ernest brought Chica into the room. Nero froze, unable to believe she was alive and unharmed. Seeing his daughter again filled him with joy. He slowly approached, saying she had grown so much. He wondered how many years had passed and asked if she had been well. Then Nero told her that he was her father. At that moment, Chica spoke, but not in human words. She simply said, "Meow." Ernest revealed that Chica was his beloved and treasured pet. She had been intended as prey during one of his hunts, but she was too cute to eat. Instead, he treated her injuries and kept her. Ernest admitted that Chica had never warmed up to him easily and that taming her had been difficult. Confused, Nero insisted that Chica was his daughter. Ernest replied in disbelief, saying he never imagined the father from that hunt was Nero himself. He remarked that life had a strange way of coming full circle. Suddenly, as Nero ran toward Chica, calling her his daughter, she began licking Ernest's face affectionately. Nero stopped mid-step, overwhelmed with regret. If only he had realized sooner. If only he had protected her back then. He apologized to Chica, saying that as long as she was alive, that was enough for him. He wanted nothing more, as long as she could smile and live happily as a human. With that, Nero rushed toward Ernest in fury, vowing to destroy every creature that had ruined their lives. As he charged forward, Chica suddenly remembered a moment from her past and called Nero Dad. That brief instant broke Nero's focus, giving Ernest the opening he needed. Ernest's horn pierced Nero's stomach, but Nero did not stop. Happy that Chica remembered him, he continued attacking Ernest. Seeing everything unfold, Chica began recalling more moments of her life with her daddy. Her memories finally clicked into place, and she cried out, asking Ernest why he was eating her father. The truth was that Nero had failed to kill Ernest and was now being devoured by him. Ernest slowly bit into Nero's flesh, savoring it piece by piece. Unable to bear the sight any longer, Chica lost consciousness. Some time later, she woke up inside Ernest's house. Before she could speak, Ernest apologized for getting carried away with his meal. As her vision cleared, shock washed over her face, and Ernest quickly reassured her that everything was fine now. Knowing she had suffered enough, he decided to tell her the truth. He said the story began with a single goat. She was the last of her species, the final female before humans drove her kind to extinction. They named her Maiden. Desperate to save the species, humans crossed every line imaginable. Using genetic engineering, they altered her DNA, granting her the ability to reproduce without a male, something previously seen only in insects and reptiles. It violated human ethics, yet no one objected. But they made one fatal mistake. For a large mammal to reproduce through parthenogenesis required enormous energy. For Maiden, a herbivore, this manifested as a hunger for meat. Even her own offspring were not spared, as she developed a fixation on consuming their brains. Then one day, by chance or fate, Maiden attacked her human caretaker, and something unprecedented occurred. By consuming him, she fused human brain matter with animal genes, becoming a being capable of giving birth to animal humans. That was how these creatures were born, a cruel joke created by human hands, as Ernest described it. To maintain their bodies, they must continue eating humans. Ernest then addressed the question burning in Chica's mind: why he enjoyed eating her daddy. Nero wasn't human. He resembled an animal. Ernest admitted he only revealed this to her. Animal humans, he said, tasted far better than humans. Desire exists in all living things, and following it is natural. If something is delicious, Ernest wants to consume it, even if it comes from the same womb as him. After that, he presented Chica before all the animal humans and declared that she was the human responsible for killing their kin. The animals erupted in fury, demanding her execution. They believed themselves to be God's children, rulers at the top of the world. But Ernest knew the truth. To him, they were nothing more than failed creations, ignorant beings also meant to be eaten. Moments later, Ernest walked through his domain carrying Chica, explaining that both humans and animals served as his nourishment. If a true God existed, it would be the one standing at the top of the food chain. A God had the right to claim all that was delicious. He told Chica that during the birth of animal humans, rare cases emerged where human memories resurfaced. Ernest called this a miracle and revealed that her father was one such case. Those who inherited memories, he said, were exceptionally delicious, and Chica shared that bloodline. At the end of an underground passage stood a massive goat, surrounded by piles of human skulls and bones. Ernest affectionately called her mommy and said he brought her a gift. He handed Chica over, and the goat began to eat her. As it happened, Ernest's mouth watered as he wondered what Chica would taste like after being reborn. He would need to wait 10 months and 10 days. When the time passed, a goat was born. Ernest named her Chica and gently asked if she remembered being human. When she didn't respond, he smiled and said there was no hurry, that her memories would return in time. He then remembered the cake he brought to celebrate. A rich, creamy cake made with human milk, extra sweet. Since it was upstairs, Ernest went to fetch it. Soon after, Chica heard footsteps descending the stairs. But it wasn't Ernest. A human appeared, holding Ernest's severed head. He tossed it onto the floor and reported that only a child was in the basement, instructing the others to continue searching for the breeding specimen. Outside, armed humans flooded into the village and began slaughtering every animal in sight. Meanwhile, in a massive city, a meeting was convened to discuss the incident that had occurred at only one of countless farms. Some attendees claimed there was no cause for alarm and insisted the matter should be left to the local administrator's judgment. Others strongly disagreed, pointing out that the administrator himself was the source of the disaster. One individual stated that this was a quality control failure that should never occur, meat attempting selective breeding on its own. In other words, there was a serious risk of genetic contamination. He argued that food security had been compromised. Strangely, the meeting wasn't attended by humans alone. Animals were present as well, seated beside them as equals, nothing like the livestock seen in the village earlier. They warned that ignoring even a minor issue would create ripples. A small farm functions like a blood vessel in a body. If it decays, that corruption will eventually spread to vital organs. For that reason, the besieged facility, Farm E13, had to be eradicated. Every hand in the room was raised in agreement. Across the world exist countless farms, all operating under the control of an unknown corporation. To sustain the lives of animal humans within them, a steady supply of human meat is secured and distributed. In return, these farms produce the highest grade animal-human meat, shipped worldwide to serve as nourishment and indulgence for the elite. A perfect dining table where humans and animal humans consume one another. This grotesque balance exists only due to the tireless efforts of that unseen company. At the meeting, a human stared at Ernest's photograph, remarking that he would have made excellent meat. Beside him, an animal human calmly replied not to worry, more could always be made. At that moment, a delicious scent filled the air. Are they human, animal, or something else entirely? No. In this world, the strong devour the weak. That is the only rule. Back in the village, humans butchered animals mercilessly but spared the elderly and children. Survivors were herded onto trucks, warned that resistance meant death. They announced the survivors would be transported to another farm. Inside one of the trucks sat Chica. Her stomach growled, and she smiled softly, saying she was hungry. At farms partnered with ANN Poseida, safety and security are guaranteed, while feed, living conditions, and stress levels are meticulously controlled. By enforcing strict quality standards in every livestock barn, they produce supreme-grade anthro meat. This is Takanaji, head chef of ANN Poseida. To him, anthro meat is the ultimate ingredient. He is often asked the secret to delicious cooking. His answer is simple. He listens to the voice of the ingredient. Their joy, anxiety, pain, fear, and moments of peace. Through conversation, Takanaji understands them. For a chef, he says, it's like gaining 100 spices. Once you know their heart, all that remains is to gently guide them toward deliciousness. The finest ingredients, elite staff, and an unforgettable dining experience woven together for the most distinguished guests. This is what ANN Poseida offers. At the end of the advertisement, Takanaji expresses his sincere anticipation of their visit. Inside ANN Poseida, guests chatted excitedly as Takanaji appeared to welcome them. He explained that tonight's menu had been crafted alongside his talented team, a one-of-a-kind full-course meal tailored to individual tastes, an encounter with cuisine unavailable anywhere else. He invited them to enjoy it fully. Everyone present had reserved a year in advance. Soon, the dishes were revealed. When a beautifully presented goat appeared on the table, excitement filled the room. To astonish them further, Takanaji rang a bell. The cooked lamb opened its eyes and asked where it was. The guests were stunned. Takanaji explained that although the head had been removed and parts prepared, the body remained connected by tubes, transfusions, and an artificial heart. Life extension measures were in place. He began explaining the dishes. One arm was served raw as carpaccio, preserving its freshness and lamb aroma, paired with edible flowers. The other arm was shaved, minced, and fried crisp in its own fat, cricket style. The organs were blended with herbs into a mare-blood pâté, enjoyed with bread. The shank was simmered into a rich bone soup. Rib meat prosciutto wrapped around a bone-in thigh formed a luxurious saltimbocca. As guests ate, the lamb grew increasingly confused. A man stepped forward and asked the lamb to tell his story. A woman commented that his meat was delicious and wanted to know about the farmer who raised him. As questions continued, the lamb began to cry. At that moment, Takanaji injected something into its heart. Alcohol was poured directly into the heart, inducing euphoria. Takanaji asked how it felt. The lamb smiled drunkenly and thanked him. Then Takanaji sliced the lamb's tongue, blood spraying like a fountain. The guests delighted in both the spectacle and the meal. Eventually, everyone departed. Late at night, Takanaji stood alone in the kitchen when an animal human entered. It was Genso, the Minister of Food and Agriculture. Genso revealed he had observed everything and praised Takanaji's work. He asked if Takanaji was always alone after the staff left. Takanaji replied yes, saying it was habit. He mentally replayed the day's dishes, savoring them again. Genso called him an extraordinary chef and mentioned a rare request for the next banquet. The guest of honor possessed an exceptionally refined palate and had no interest in farm-raised stock. What they desired was wild calf and natural human. Later, inside a car, Takanaji sat beside his son. His son asked if he would attend his next game. Takanaji promised he would. Earlier, When Genso mentioned the need for a wild human, worry had quietly taken root in Takanaji's heart. He said that he only works with antihumans, not those raised naturally. At that moment, Genso revealed that a high-ranking official was searching for a personal chef, and if Takanaji could satisfy that guest, he would ascend to unprecedented heights. As Takanaji recalled those words while sitting in the car and speaking with his son, he realized he had been waiting for this day to arrive, the highest rank a chef could ever reach. He believed that for his son and his family, he had to seize this chance. A few days later, all the chefs working under Takanaji gathered in one place. As they talked about how fortunate they were to work beneath someone like Takanaji, they noticed a strange smell. Suspecting a gas leak, they decided to check the kitchen. But when they tried to open the door, they discovered it was locked. Outside the room stood someone holding a gas cylinder with a pipe feeding directly inside. Even as screams echoed from within, the person never opened the door. Before long, the animal humans invited as guests arrived at the hotel to sample the meal. Takanaji welcomed them and unveiled an extravagantly arranged dish. Human heads covered the surface with legs placed throughout. It was a luxurious cake crafted entirely from human bodies. Takanaji bowed deeply, explaining that all the humans used were wild-caught, and asked the guests to savor them fully. At that moment, a cat pointed toward the top of the cake and asked what it was. Smiling, Takanaji explained that it was quite literally the human soul or perhaps the essence of the mind. He revealed that he had carefully extracted all 13 brains and blended them into a special bouillon, simmered overnight. A single spoonful carried the depth of their complex inner worlds. He encouraged them to enjoy it alongside the flesh and blood. As they began eating, Takanaji thanked his staff. He said that at the peak of his dream, he was able to decorate it with flowers representing each of them. He believed his journey as a chef had reached its summit here, and yet he declared that he would go even further beyond. While speaking, he noticed one guest who wasn't enjoying the meal as much as the others. Approaching him, Takanaji asked if something was unsatisfactory. This wolf was Sawtooth, the guest of honor. Sawtooth replied that he wanted Takanaji to pour everything he had into the dish. But this meal felt like a banquet where the main course had escaped. Hearing this, Takanaji felt anger rise, but he kept his composure and replied that this dish represented his entire career and life. It was the culmination of years of effort shared with his cherished comrades. This full-course meal contained everything he had given. He asked Sawtooth what more he could possibly demand. At that moment, Sawtooth rang a bell. As it sounded, Genso entered the room, dragging Takanaji's son behind him. Takanaji immediately shouted, begging them to spare his child. He pleaded desperately, but they ignored him. Sawtooth ordered him to be silent, saying his shouting drowned out the voices of the ingredients. With that, the animals lunged at Takanaji's son and began eating him. The boy screamed in agony as he was devoured alive before his father's eyes. Witnessing this, Takanaji vowed to kill every single one of them. Then Genso appeared behind him and said that he had been a fine chef, but nothing more. As those words landed, Takanaji released a scream so loud it echoed beyond the hotel walls. Later that night, Genso and Sawtooth stood together. Genso complained of a headache, frustrated that replacing a chef had ended in failure. He worried about how they would explain this outcome to their superiors. Sawtooth replied that there could be no compromise in the pursuit of culinary perfection. Opening his saliva-filled mouth, Sawtooth said that surely the higher-ups would understand. It was all in service of creating the ultimate dining experience for antihumans. After all, humans were nothing more than meat. Elsewhere, a young otter sat surrounded by toys when a wolf entered his room and told him his shipment had been approved. Later, the otter walked through the streets with the wolf as other animals congratulated him, asking not to be forgotten. The otter thanked the wolf and everyone around him. He said he never imagined a day would come when he'd be shipped out with pride. He expressed gratitude to all who had lived alongside him. They entered a warehouse, the otter saying nothing made him happier than becoming someone's delicious meal. After walking further, they reached a restricted area and told the otter to enter. As he tried to speak, the human accompanying the wolf kicked him inside. The otter fell into the machinery and was ground apart. Meat that never tenderized, low quality through and through. The wolf wondered how many they had gone through this month. From birth, the meat is conditioned to recognize itself as food. This allows it to grow stress-free, rich in sweetness and umami, achieving a perfect finish. Even well-trained stock is immediately culled if it fails to meet grade. Through such efforts, each farm produces uniquely flavored human meat filled with regional character, giving rise to anthro-humans. To the lives that allow themselves to become meat, respect and gratitude are offered. Elsewhere, animals sat eating, giving thanks before their meal. At that moment, a dog noticed the animal human beside him hadn't properly expressed gratitude. He told them to eat with better manners. That animal human was none other than the goat, Chica. After hearing the dog's words, Chica simply stared at him in silence, which only made the dog angrier. He told her that if she wanted to become good meat, she needed a heart filled with gratitude. The dog warned her that if she kept behaving this way, the authorities would dispose of her soon. He added that he himself would never be disposed of because he exercised every day and kept his body in perfect shape. At that moment, an animal sitting across the table noticed something strange on the dog's face and asked what it was. It turned out that the dog was bleeding from both his mouth and nose. Everyone panicked when they saw him coughing up blood. Fear spread quickly as they wondered if he had contracted some deadly disease. Before the panic could grow worse, an announcement was made telling everyone not to worry, as a cleanup team had already been dispatched. Even though the dog collapsed and died at the table, Chica didn't react at all and continued eating calmly. In a control room, a human and an animal watched the scene and commented that it was such a waste. Soon after, the animals were transported to a secure location. Confused about why they were brought there, they listened as a person stepped forward and announced that an infection case had occurred earlier that morning. Fortunately, only one individual had shown symptoms. As everyone knew, food safety was the facility's top priority. The announcement continued, stating that all animals who had eaten at the cafeteria would be disposed of. He thanked them politely for their cooperation. Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath them was filled with soil, burying all the animals alive. At the same time, a human and an animal headed down to the basement, where children scheduled for disposal had been gathered with others. They were not kept there to be spared, but to be slaughtered quietly so the meat could be taken for personal use. The animal picked up an axe and ordered the children to push their necks forward. Shockingly, none of the children resisted. The animal swung the axe, severed one head, and tossed it toward the human, telling him to handle it. Then he moved down the line, slaughtering every child one by one. Not a single child showed fear throughout the process. Finally, the axe came down on Chica's neck. But in the next moment, Chica was alive and unharmed. She believed it had all been a dream. She dressed herself and walked out, unsure where the dream ended and reality began. After Chica left, both the ox and the human responsible for her death were found dead. Chica exited the facility, muttering that she was hungry. In the mountains, two humans wandered aimlessly, having lost their way. After walking for a while, one of them recognized the surroundings and thought they had found the path home. Just then, they saw a child standing ahead. The child guessed they were lost and invited them to his house. Relieved, the man told the woman they were saved. Neither of them noticed the knife hidden in the child's other hand. Meanwhile, Chica searched the mountains for food. She tried to catch a rabbit, but it escaped. With no meat to find, she began eating grass. Suddenly, she heard a sound and followed it, discovering an injured wolf. Wanting to end its suffering, Chica picked up a rock and asked if she could eat it once it died. Seeing the rock, the wolf trembled in fear and sat down. Chica tossed the rock aside and sat in front of it, waiting quietly. After some time, the wolf died, and Chica ate it. A goat eating a wolf. Even after finishing it entirely, Chica was still hungry. She continued walking through the mountains in search of food and eventually found a house. As she ran toward it, a trap activated and snared her with a rope. Hearing the noise, the owner stepped outside. A cow emerged, smiled when he saw Chica, freed her from the trap, and invited her inside. He gave her plenty of food, watching as she ate. While she was eating, the cow apologized for the trap, explaining that people sometimes wandered into the area by mistake. He then asked where she came from. He warned her that the mountains were dangerous for a child. Chica replied that she came from a place filled with many animals. Instantly, the cow realized she was from a farm. Overcome with emotion, the cow hugged Chica and told her she must have suffered greatly. He promised that she was safe now and that he would take care of her. As he spoke, the same child from earlier watched them through the window. After a moment, the boy left and headed to a warehouse where the lost man had been trapped. The child approached him and, for reasons unknown, began removing his clothes. The man saw the boy and immediately demanded to know where his wife was. The child stayed silent, gripping the knife tightly in his hand. In the next instant, the boy was carrying a large slab of meat. He went down into the basement, stopped in front of a cell, raised the meat and said, "Mom, it's dinner time." Meanwhile, after finishing her meal, Chica drifted into sleep. The cow gently lifted her and laid her onto the bed. Before leaving, he whispered, "At least for tonight, sleep peacefully." He told Chica that she could stay here forever, that there was more than enough food. As he walked away, the cow remarked that the night felt especially pleasant. On nights like this, he felt an urge to drink. Saying so, he opened another room's door. Inside waited a horrifying sight. Dozens of women were bound to the ceiling, their chests exposed. Without hesitation, the cow began drinking milk directly from them. This scene cannot be shown on YouTube. Elsewhere, Chica awoke, stirred by a strange smell. Calling out for the cow, she stepped into the hallway. That was when she noticed a door leading down to the basement. She descended and found a bear inside a cell, barely clinging to life. Chica reached out her hand, but the bear instantly slashed her arm. After devouring it, the bear seized her other arm and dragged her into the cage. In seconds, the bear consumed Chica entirely. The next morning, the cow knocked on her door to wake her. When he entered, Chica was gone. The cow suspected the boy, the one who butchered humans and fed them to the bear, had taken her. The boy called the cow his father and swore innocence, but the cow refused to believe him. He could not accept that Chica would leave on her own. Assuming the boy had harmed her, the cow demanded she be returned. After beating him, the boy only muttered, "My mother." In the next moment, the cow stood before the cage where the bear lived. Seeing blood pooled on the floor, he realized Chica had been eaten. The bear's name was Ophelia. The cow dropped to his knees, whispering that this was far too cruel. He said he believed he had finally found her again after all this time. He admitted that what he drank was not human milk, but anthro-human milk. Chica was meant to be his milk, and now she was gone. The cow let out a single roar, then licked Chica's blood from the ground. He decided to forget her and suggested they should eat the boy instead. Shocked, the boy asked what he meant. The cow chose that moment to reveal the truth. Looking at the boy, he said the secret to making human children tender and sweet is love. He also confessed that he was not the boy's real father. When Murph was very young, the cow brought him into this house. He introduced him to new siblings and a new mother. Ophelia had already been locked in the cage. When she saw Murph, she lunged at him, only to be stopped by the bars. Murph panicked, and the cow calmly explained that it was simply a mother's love. She loved him so deeply that she wanted to eat him. Ophelia had once been nothing more than a slave bred to produce milk. When they stopped feeding her human flesh, she deteriorated and collapsed as an anthro-human. She was starving for human meat, just as a human child starves for affection. The cow exploited that hunger. He explained that children raised with love develop sweeter flesh, like well-aged milk. He revealed to Murph that what he believed was love was merely a primal urge to consume him, no different from insects. Raising premium meat through deception and false affection, by his own admission, was the masterpiece of his life. Hearing this, Murph realized the fate of the siblings who were said to have gone to town. The cow rubbed his belly and told Murph he would soon be there too, blended into a thick, bloody slurry. Suddenly, Ophelia screamed. Something pierced the cow's stomach. The wound widened, and something emerged. It was none other than the goat, Chica. The cow froze, instantly understanding. He stepped into the cage, muttering that he couldn't believe she truly existed, that something like this could really happen. He called Chica a miracle, his goddess. Lifting her, he declared his love, saying she was born exactly as fate intended, sent by God for him alone. Unable to resist such a gift, he decided to take a bite of the pure, innocent goddess. He laid her on the table and tore away her clothes. Just as he was about to eat her, he felt pain. Turning around, he saw Murph had stabbed him with a small spear. The cow asked why, remarking that it hurt. Murph himself didn't know why he acted. It simply happened. The cow seized Murph by the throat and prepared to devour him when Ophelia leapt from behind and bit into him. The cow struggled, but failed to stop her. In the chaos, a lantern fell from the table, shattered, and set everything ablaze. As the cow was eaten alive, he wondered how Ophelia still had such strength. Her stomach had been torn open. She should have been dead. He questioned whether this was because she had eaten Chica. Ophelia continued consuming him as he begged her to stop. She ignored him. After finishing the cow, she used her last strength to crawl toward Murph, but died before reaching him. With the lantern fallen, the flames spread, engulfing the entire house. All the captive human women perished as the building burned to ashes. Outside, Chica and Murph stood together. Murph asked Chica why she saved him. Chica replied that if he burned to a crisp, he wouldn't taste good. Hearing that, Murph asked if she planned to eat him. Chica smiled and said, yeah. As they were talking, it became visible that Chica's one arm, badly burned earlier, was healing at an incredibly fast pace. At an unknown location, a chimpanzee was playing golf. After taking a swing, some humans behind him praised his performance. The chimpanzee suggested they walk while talking. A man walked beside him, presenting reports on farms across the regions. He explained that there had been a surge in meat loss caused by genetic defects, sudden deaths, and cannibalism, issues they had suspected for a long time. The man theorized these defects were likely the result of repeated cloning of the genetic material line, and he stressed that genetic-level inspections of edible meat would soon become an urgent necessity. If these issues weren't solved, they would face a global food crisis. Before the man could finish, the chimpanzee hit the golf ball, which landed in a pond. He remarked that receiving praise always distracted him. He then gestured toward a random man, asking him to toss the ball. Without hesitation, the man removed one of his eyes and handed it to the chimpanzee. The chimpanzee took it silently and resumed listening to the man presenting the reports. He emphasized that to prevent a global food crisis, they must accelerate development immediately, focusing on the redevelopment of regenerative bodies. Meanwhile, in a distant laboratory, some doctors were walking around. A doctor stood in front of a large tube containing the head of Ernest. At the same time, MRF was crying, witnessing his so-called mother dying in front of him. Suddenly, he awoke from his sleep and saw Chica licking him all over. MRF got up and asked Chica what she was doing. She replied that she had been watching him while he slept. He then demanded a reason, but before she could answer, he became angry, remembering that she had been licking him. When he asked if she had actually done it, she played dumb, pretending she had done nothing. MRF began walking away, telling Chica to go wherever she wanted. Despite this, Chica followed him. Initially, he ignored her, thinking she would leave soon, but when she continued following, he became furious and asked how long she would keep trailing him. MRF shouted, accusing Chica of killing his mother and father. He declared that if she hadn't appeared, he could have been happy. Declaring that he no longer wanted to see her face, he picked up a tree branch with the intent to kill her and eat her, telling her not to protest as it was payback for what she had done to his mother. Chica calmly said she understood and told him to go ahead if it would make him feel better. In the next moment, MRF struck Chica on the head with all his force and continued hitting her until she stopped moving. Believing she was dead, he was shocked when all of her wounds healed instantly and she rose as if nothing had happened. She apologized to MRF and told him she couldn't die. She was about to reveal something about herself, but the scene cut off. The next moment, they were sitting in the middle of a forest around a fire. As frogs cooked, Chica broke the silence, asking MRF if he died. Could she eat him? MRF was incredulous, but Chica continued, saying he looked soft and sweet, and his blood seemed healthy. She said she bet he would taste delicious. MRF didn't react but asked if she was still in pain. Chica confirmed and explained that it hurt even while healing. She added that MRF had been in pain too, tossing and turning in his sleep. MRF revealed his name to her, and she responded that she was called Number 1128. MRF said that wasn't a name and asked what she planned to do next. She answered that she would live so she could eat, then began eating the frog roasting over the fire. Despite eating, her stomach growled violently. She said it wasn't enough and that she was so hungry she felt she might die. MRF advised her to sleep, saying it would make her forget hunger. Chica agreed and asked MRF to sleep as well. He refused, claiming she would eat him if he did. She reassured him she would never do that. Closing her eyes, she murmured, "I'm alive, Mom is," before falling asleep. While she slept, MRF left, saying he couldn't stay with her anymore. At that moment, a monstrous voice called her name. She remained unafraid and asked who it was, sensing familiarity. The voice instructed her to run. Instantly, Chica awoke surrounded by animals. They remarked that her senses were as sharp as their boss had claimed. They captured her but were astonished at how easily they had done so. To confirm her identity, they cut her ear. Instantly, it healed, proving who she was. As they tied her up, MRF returned, claiming he had been lost and wandering the forest for days, asking if they had anything to eat. Seeing him, the goat aimed the gun at MRF's head, ordering him to back off. The goat warned that this was no place for a human child to be wandering. The raccoon observed and concluded that this was truly a lost kid. He suggested they butcher and eat him. Suddenly, a knife pierced the raccoon's throat, killing him instantly. MRF then leapt at the stunned goat and killed him just as quickly. Witnessing this, the dog was shocked. He grabbed Chica and pointed a knife at MRF, demanding he back off. MRF remained unafraid, spat out blood, and demanded, "Give me back my sister." In the next moment, MRF severed the dog's arm and killed him. While wiping sweat from his forehead, Chica began eating the dog. MRF turned to her and asked what she was doing. Seeing her eat, he insisted they cook it first, warning that eating it raw could lead to parasites or sickness. Chica ignored the warning, saying it tasted good as it was. Murph then produced a knife and instructed Chica to watch as he began cutting the meat, explaining that such food always tastes better with a little effort. While cutting, Chica asked why he had returned to save her and what he meant by sister. Murph replied vaguely, questioning whether it truly mattered. After cooking the meat properly, he offered it to Chica. She tasted it and exclaimed it was amazing, something she had never eaten before, praising Murph. While they ate, a strange bat observed everything. A human was attached to its back, and through a pipe, the bat drank all of his blood. Soon, the bat appeared in front of Murph and Chica. Murph attempted to run but found his body immobile. The bat opened its mouth to devour Murph, but a frog flew and struck its face. Chica had thrown it to save him. Murph immediately grabbed Chica's hand and they ran from the bat. As he ran, he felt powerless and terrified, thinking he couldn't defeat it alone. Then he realized that if he and Chica worked together, they might have a chance. They quickly devised a plan and hid in the forest. When the bat approached, Murph leapt from a tree to attack, but the bat caught him midair. Behind the tree, Chica's body appeared, headless. The bat noticed and seemed confused. Chica then emerged from behind, stabbing the bat's leg with a knife. The attack caused no harm. The bat removed the knife effortlessly and licked the blood. Murph remained in its grasp, helpless. He realized their trap was ineffective and concluded this was no ordinary beastman. Murph noticed the bat's eyes and saw the same predatory hunger his father had. an eye that only viewed humans as food. After licking some blood, the bat attacked Murph, sucking his blood. Luckily, it was distracted and dropped him, leaving him barely alive. A large bear then appeared and attacked the bat. The bat resisted, using its powers to fight back, screeching into the bear's ears. The bear persisted, striking the bat repeatedly until it died, then smashed its head against a tree. The bear licked the bat's exposed brain before devouring it completely. Chica attempted to escape with Murph, but the bear noticed them. He picked them up and walked through the forest, declaring that everyone would eat together. After some time, they reached a cave. Chica protested that they were not food, but the bear ignored her, entering the cave and dropping them inside. Bones of various creatures were scattered across the floor. Strange animals appeared in front of Chica. One creature advanced, opening a mouth filled with insects. A tongue shot out and grabbed Chica's arm, emanating from goat-like animals. Confused, Chica tried to move, but was restrained by a small creature holding her leg. Then, a mole-like animal approached, its stomach wide open, ready to eat her. Before they could act, another animal arrived, ordering everyone to stop. It reminded them not to eat living creatures, emphasizing that Chica was still alive. The bear apologized for kidnapping her. This animal, apparently their captain, was named Mimi. He inspected Chica and determined she was a hybrid. Chica, confused, asked who they were. Mimi reassured her, saying they would not harm her. He introduced himself and explained that everyone present was his family. Beyond the mountains, he said, a breeding farm existed for beast people. Mimi and his companions were born there, and when deemed unwanted, they were discarded as trash. Chica struggled to understand, so Mimi explained that they had been born to be processed as food. Mimi revealed that his body had a defect, which made him useful for certain purposes. He had been studied over a long period, dissected, and every drop of his blood analyzed thoroughly. He wondered why he was still alive. Why couldn't he just die and be at peace? He cursed his own stubbornness to survive. He had been completely used up, turned into garbage, and discarded. At least he could die. There were tears of relief. But when the stench of rot hit his nose, he realized he had gained freedom. The freedom to breathe. The freedom to move his fingers. The freedom to eat rats. The freedom to claim corpses, including his own. He stitched together discarded corpses and healed his own body. Then he helped others in the same situation and escaped. He asked Chica not to be scared. Even though they appeared dangerous, they were good-hearted. Hearing that, Chica began playing with one of them and remarked that they were really cute. The next moment, the table was filled with food. Cooked fish were laid in front of Chica. The bear informed her that he had caught them. Everyone started eating, each in their own peculiar way. The goat ate peacefully when suddenly his organs fell out of his stomach. He neither died nor felt pain. This little creature, named Ketapil, was on duty today to put back all of his organs. While Chica was eating, Mimi assumed that she still hadn't noticed anything. He told her that she was a hybrid, which was why she had been abandoned. Mimi pointed toward the otter-like animal named Moss. He explained to Chica that Moss looked like an otter but had the mouth of a hippo, a hybrid crossbreed of two or more animals. Normally, beast people are born with traits from a single animal, but due to genetic errors, rare ones are born with mixed traits from multiple animals. The farm Mimi came from collected these hybrids for study. He guessed that Chica had also run away. Chica remained silent, continuing to eat, so Mimi stopped speaking. He told her she could eat as much as she liked. After Chica finished, Mimi asked if the food was good. She replied that it was really good. Mimi reassured her that it was safe here. As long as they lived quietly in the forest, no one in the world would care about rejects like them. He told her that if she agreed, she could stay here forever. After that, Chica took a piece of meat and walked toward Murph, who still hadn't woken up. She brought the food near his face, urging him to eat, but he couldn't open his mouth. Seeing this, Chica cut her own hand and fed him some of her blood. Chica told Murph, who clearly wasn't listening, that everyone said they could stay here forever. She explained that it was safe with plenty of food, fish, berries, and even humans. She urged him to wake up and eat a lot, saying that skinny him didn't look tasty at all. Saying that, Chica left the cave and stood outside, gazing at the view. At that moment, an unexpected creature appeared. It was none other than the deer, Ernest. Ernest said he had searched for her for a long time, but it was never a burden, because he always held the thought of her growing up in his heart. He declared that he was her papa, the one who had created her. Chica heard this and asked if the one calling her in her dreams had been him. It was the first time she had heard her own name. She asked Ernest if Chica was truly her name. Ernest rubbed her head and answered yes. He said that from now on they would always be together. Ernest grabbed her hand and said that this place was nice, but it smelled like rotting garbage, so they should go somewhere safer, somewhere with cleaner air. Ernest took a step forward, but Chica didn't move. She said she didn't want to go because everyone was here. Hearing that, Ernest smiled and said he understood. Right then, Dory appeared. She said they had been looking for Chica everywhere and that the food was ready. She saw Ernest and asked if he was someone Chica knew. Before Chica could answer, Ernest grabbed Dory's head and ripped it apart. He drank her blood and ate her brain. He savored the taste intensely. He said it was mixed with something unique. Ernest walked toward the cave, saying that if what was here became a shackle for her, he would leave nothing behind. When he reached the entrance of the cave, Mimi spotted him. He asked Ernest what had happened to Dory and the sheep girl. When Ernest didn't answer, Mimi realized something terrible had occurred. He called the bear named Lean and ordered that this deer could not be allowed to live. Without hesitation, Lean ran to attack Ernest, but he easily dodged. Suddenly, Ernest fixed his stare on Lean. The stare terrified Lean so completely that he couldn't move. He dropped to his knees, covering his head. Then the goat ran to attack him. Ernest easily grabbed her by the head and plucked it off. He did the same with the others, first licking the brain, then eating it. Seeing this, the remaining animals tried to flee, but Ernest gave them no chance. He captured each one and killed them brutally. After eliminating all the animals, he moved to kill Murph. But before he could, Chica intervened. She begged Ernest not to kill him. Shocked, Ernest asked why she was protecting this human. She replied that Murph had saved her, so she didn't want him to die. Ernest looked at Chica's sad expression and wondered if she was suffering. He assumed that she was regaining her humanity. He thought this was a sign of brain development. He realized that Chica cared deeply for this human. He said he thought that was truly wonderful. And with that, he decided to kill Murph anyway, reasoning that Chica would develop even more and taste even better. As Ernest prepared to take a bite, something unexpected happened. He was sent flying, crashing through the ground. He wondered what had occurred. His body wouldn't move. Something had thrown him away. He wondered if it had been the giant bear. When he looked forward, he saw Chica, completely transformed. He realized that it was she who had sent him flying.